welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason. Here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Sojka.
Richard, good evening, good afternoon, good morning.
All the above. Stefan, here we are back in our favourite club down the end of the street. We're actually here to record a think tank, but I thought let's take the opportunity and intro the show.
Well, I'm shocked that I'm even here. So the fact that I'm here and killing two birds with one stone is just a phenomenon for me. And it's great to be here. This place is just rocking at the moment.
Tonight it is. The restaurant's full of people. Yeah. I mean, it's usually got some people here, but it's...
Oh, I think they've changed the chef, and the chef might be... maybe they've got another operation going on at the back, a bit of money laundering or something.
Well, you know, they've just opened up a gym here, which is just behind the restaurant.
Ah, so yeah, they're all on protein shakes.
They either go from the gym to the restaurant or from the gym to the restaurant to the gym.
or they come to the restaurant, pig out and go home and just feel more guilty than they would have otherwise.
It's a 24-hour gym. You can come here at 3 o'clock in the morning if you want.
when your guilt really kicks in. Well, it's good to be here. What episode are we on now?
191.
That's ridiculous. I'm sure I haven't been here for at least 190. No, when was the last time I was here? It's been a while.
I think a while.
It's been a while. This year, 2012, I can see why we're hurtling towards oblivion, because this year's almost over already.
Well, it's interesting you should say hurtling towards oblivion, because you know the world's ending this year anyway.
Well, that's right.
But before it does, I've noticed in the last couple of weeks our listenership has increased by about 25 to 30%. I'm trying to understand why. A lot of people are downloading the show.
They all want to be saved before the end.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's all. They're thinking there's going to be a skeptic rapture.
Well, Maynard thinks it's because of him.
I think he's probably got a good point there. Anyway, he's a bit of a talent.
Yes, episode number 191 for the 16th of June. And coming up on today's episode, Dr Rachie goes on a little adventure to Rhode Island in Sydney Harbour. Have you heard of Rhode Island?
Rhode Island? No, there's a few islands in Sydney Harbour, but no, what's on Rhode Island?
Well, not too much at the moment, but in the past, Louis Pasteur's nephew did some research there with rabbits.
I was going to say rats, because there's a lot of rats in Sydney, and especially on the islands, but rabbits.
Rabbits. So that's her laughing in the background. No. So we're going to hear all about Louis Pasteur's nephew on Rhode Island in Sydney Harbour.
Wow. Was it scientific research? I hope
yes, it was.
We'll soon find out. And what else you got?
Well, a good man I met a year or so ago in California. I spoke at his school.
Oh, really?
He's a high school teacher at a place called Vacaville High School, which is not far out of San Francisco, and I spoke there for his students, which was really great. He's written to me in concern because the governor of California is indicating that Californian high school students need only do now 1 year of science to graduate high school instead of 2.
Really?
Yeah. What?
I thought 2 wasn't enough.
Well, 2 isn't enough.
That's ridiculous. Well, 1 year of science? We need to get behind that. We need to get a campaign going.
Aaron is quite concerned about this, so he has a chat to some of his teachers, colleagues. So teachers around the world will have a special interest in today's episode of the Skeptic Zone to hear your Californian colleagues.
Okay, well, that's good.
And then following that, and the reason why we're here at our favourite club down the end of the street, Think Tank.
The Think Tank.
We'll be thinking in the Think Tank.
Look, I can see them over there. They're just polishing off their Chinese food. Maynard, there he is.
Joe Benamou, Dr Rachie, they're having a chat at the moment.
They're very engaged. They seem very intense. Maynard's got about 14 screens. He's got 3 iPhones,
he's
couple of laptops.
A couple at the moment, yeah.
He's going for it. He's got Wi-Fi going.
He's a with it guy.
He's switched on.
I think we should settle back with a drink, listen to the first part of the zone,
and then come back with the tank.
Come back with the old Think Tank.
We should. It's good to be here, Richard. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Now it's time for Dr Rachie Reports with Dr Rachael Dunlop.
And so here I am on Rhode Island, which is in the middle of Sydney Harbour, almost to the bottom of the harbour, in fact, just across from Leichhardt on one side and Drummoyne on the other. The island is actually quite small, although apparently it's twice as big as what it was when it was initially used back in the 1800s. And I'm standing outside the summer house, the large summer house, which from the outside you can just look through the windows and it's got wooden floors. It looks like it used to be used as a dance hall or something similar. I'm under a giant fig tree and I'm reading a plaque here about the era of recreation that was Rhode Island. So it was first declared a reserve for recreation in 1879. But by 1888, it was public recreation was ceased because there was a biological laboratory built on this island. Now, it's very curious that many people who live in Sydney and indeed in Australia are not aware that this biological research facility was actually inhabited by Adrien Loir, who was the nephew of Louis Pasteur. Now, the wonderful, interesting and fascinating story of why Adrien Loir came to be in Sydney and indeed on Rhode Island is detailed in the book by Stephen Dando Collins called Pasteur's Gambit. It's a fascinating tale. I recommend that all listeners seek it out if they can. It actually won a Queensland Literary Award when it was published a few years ago. And you can also find a podcast about the book, which is an interview with the author, which was featured on Conversations with Richard Fidler. So if you don't have time to read the book or you can't dig it up, I recommend you find the podcast. It's fascinating. So that's why I've bothered to come out here today to Rhode Island. In fact, anyone can come here. It's a National Park and Wildlife Service national park. You just have to pay a landing fee, which gives you a permit to come here. The only way you can get to the island is with your own transport. So I actually caught myself a water taxi here this morning. It's a Monday, so there's nobody else here, making it a pretty special place to be right now. The sun is out. It's a beautiful day in Sydney. I'm right in the centre of the harbour and there's nobody here. So back to what this island used to be used for. Well, as I mentioned, in 1879, it was used for recreation, but in 1888, when Adrien Loir came here to do experiments on chicken cholera, which Louis Pasteur had already demonstrated in France could be used to kill rabbits. Now, the New South Wales government had put out advertisements in newspapers all across the world seeking a biological solution to the rabbit plague in Australia. And in the 1800s, Henry Parkes, who at the time was the Premier of New South Wales, decided to offer the princely sum of £25,000, which roughly converts to about $10 million in today's money, as a prize for the person who could find a biological solution to the rabbit problem in New South Wales. So, of course, Louis Pasteur at the time was looking for funds to build the Pasteur Institute in Paris. And his wife came across this advertisement in a Parisian newspaper. And Louis decided immediately to send his nephew and protege, Adrien Loir, out to Australia to see if he could collect this prize money, which could then be used to build the Pasteur Institute. And so his research facility, which was doing research with chicken cholera and also later, I think, with anthrax vaccine, was set up here on Rhode Island. The public got a little bit annoyed about the fact that the island was taken away from them to be used for research. So in 1894, it was reverted back for public recreation. And a trust was appointed to manage the island. And the son of Brett Rod, now, of course, this is called Rhode Island. The reason it's called Rhode Island is because a man by the name of Brent Rod had paid a deposit on this place in 1859. And he was the first chairperson of the trust. And within the first year of the trust managing the island, most of the buildings were removed, so the laboratories unfortunately were torn down, and improvements were made to accommodate the public. So in fact, up to about 1,000 visitors at a time were received in 1904, and it was the height of popularity in the 20s and 30s for picnics and social events. including dances which were held in the hall, which I'm standing in front of right now. There was also a pool and a changing room constructed, as well as summer houses and gazebos for picnicking. And I'm standing, if I turn 180 degrees to face towards Des Moines, I can see two of these gazebos, one of which I've been having lunch in indeed today, which faces the water, and it's a beautiful place to be. So I'm just walking around now to the other side of the island, to the eastern side, to read some information about the experimentation era on Rhode Island. So there's actually a map here on this plaque that I'm looking at, which shows a plan of Rhode Island and the lab buildings during the Royal Commission on Rabbit Experimentation. So this was in 1888 that these labs were built for Adrien Loir, Louis Pasteur's nephew. There were artificial burrows built in the middle of the island. This enclosure was surrounded and roofed with wire gauze to keep the rabbits obviously in. And of course a big part of this experimentation happening on an island is obviously for quarantine purposes. There was a residence, there was a kitchen, a general laboratory with a microscope room, a crematorium, a storeroom, disinfecting tanks or drainage, pumps and water tanks, and a kitchen and an aviary. Louis Pasteur's nephew, Adrien Loir, did conduct experiments here using the chicken cholera. However, Pasteur had already done field trials with chicken cholera in France before Loir came to Australia. And Pasteur was very keen to collect the prize money from the New South Wales government and go back to France so he could get on with building the Pasteur Institute. Because unsurprisingly, he wasn't particularly interested in the Australian issue with rabbits. He was really more concerned about snatching that money and getting back to Paris to do what he wanted to do. So after a short time of working on Rhode Island, Pasteur declared to the New South Wales government that he wasn't going to conduct any further experiments, and he wanted to just take the money and go. Now, it's also a bit more complicated than that, because it turns out that there was quite a lot of people that were against what he was doing, primarily because they had a vested interest in the rabbits remaining in Australia. So this included people that were fencers, so making rabbit fences for money, people that were scalpers, so who would catch the rabbits and then sell their pelts, and people that poisoned the rabbits. So if a biological solution could be found to get rid of the plague, all these people would be out of money and out of a job. So they weren't very interested in this occurring. There was also some political unrest at the time that eventually resulted in this prize money not being awarded to anyone. However, it also says on this plaque, and I don't recall reading this in Stephen Dando Collins' wonderful book, but it says that experiments carried out by the Rabbit Commission revealed that native birds were also susceptible to the microbe, and therefore the Commission rejected Pasteur's claim. Now, I guess this doesn't sound completely outlandish if we are talking about chicken cholera, or, you know, if it affects chickens, I guess it's potentially going to affect other birds. But this rejection, it says here, this rejection was a significant decision as it indicated the professional development of the Australian scientific community. Yeah. Now, apart from this site being historically very interesting and I think incredibly important, and I think incredibly underrated, interestingly enough, when I caught a water taxi here this morning, I came from Circular Quay, which is the major port for ferries in Sydney. And as we whizzed out towards here, the cab driver whose job it is and whose life it is to ferry people around the harbour wasn't even sure which island was Rhode Island and didn't know the significance of it. And also there's been some sort of lurid activity that's gone on here as well, which I think makes the story even more fascinating. French actress Sarah Bernhardt, who toured Australia in 1891, she became romantically linked with Adrien Loir, Pasteur's nephew. And indeed, she used this island as quarantine for her dogs, as she came out here from France by ship, and she wanted to bring her collection of little lap dogs. And of course, she couldn't bring them into Australia without them being quarantined. And so she organised for them to stay here whilst they were quarantined for any infectious disease. And according to this plaque, during her stay, she visited Rhode Island often and held picnics for her friends. And there are stories of her escapades, including Sarah and other ladies in her group climbing onto the roof of the house during a game of hide and seek. So once Adrien Loir finished his experiments here, Pasteur ordered him back to France. The island was then converted back to recreation in 1894. And now you can hire it out for private functions, for weddings, or for just... You can just come here. It's cost me $7 to land here. The only issue is actually getting yourself here, considering that you need to get your own water transport. There's one final thing I want to mention about the Pasteur story, which I think is really fascinating, and that is the story of pasteurisation. Now, when Adrien Loir was first sent out to Australia by Louis Pasteur, as I mentioned, Pasteur wanted him to get the money and get the hell back to Paris. But once he landed in Australia, he realised it was going to be more complicated than that, and he would need some money in order to live on whilst he was here. So in fact, he managed to convince the brewers at Victoria Bitter Brewery, which is one of our most popular and highly consumed beers in Australia, otherwise known as VB, that they should learn how to pasteurise their beer. Now, during this time, before sort of preservation or pasteurisation was introduced, it was very difficult to transport beer across large sections of Australia, being that it's such a big country. And so that limited the reach of brewers with their beer. Now, VB agreed for Loir to teach them how to pasteurise. They indeed introduced pasteurisation into the brewery. Hence, they were able to spread their beer, transport their beer far and wide across Australia. And perhaps this may have contributed to the fact that VB is one of the most popular beers today in Australia. So I'm incredibly pleased to be out here today on this beautiful island in the middle of beautiful Sydney Harbour with absolutely nobody else around. It's a little piece of history in Sydney, which I think not many people know about. I encourage you to get out here. To my right, only sort of 200 metres away is a rowing club. You know, if you got yourself a rowboat or a kayak, you can come over here as long as you pay your $7 landing fee to the National Parks and Wildlife Service. I think we're incredibly lucky that this is public access and not owned by some millionaire. That means we can't get on here. And I think it's a shame that more people don't know about what happened here and the importance of the science that went on here. And that's it for now. I'm going back to enjoy the island and to take some photos. This is Dr Rachie in the middle of Sydney Harbour, and I'll talk to you next time.
Dr Rachael Dunlop is one of Australia's foremost media commentators in matters concerning so-called alternative medicine. She has appeared on national radio and national television. Dr Rachie is available for interviews, and you can contact her at Rachael at skepticzone.tv.
Hi, this is Carrie Poppy.
I'm Ross Blotcher.
Oh, hey, Ross.
Hey, we're from a podcast called
Oh No, Ross and Carrie.
We find out what happens when you show up and ask questions.
We've hung out with the Kabbalists.
The Mormons.
We've gone and gotten ear candles.
Gone to the Sikhs.
We show up so you don't have to.
So find out where we're going next.
We'll even have special episodes where we have famous guests like Brian Dalton from Mr. Deity.
You heard that awesome theme music? He wrote that.
You should come visit us at onopodcast.com or
facebook.com/onrack.
What the hell's OnRack, Ross?
ONRAC.
Oh no, Ross and Carrie.
That's our show.
That's so smart. Come join us.
Hello, Skeptic Zone listeners. This is your fellow Zone fan, and high school biology and earth science teacher Erin Kelly Stevens here. I'm coming to you from the beautiful and warm Central Valley town of Woodland, California. Recently, it came to my attention through an email from the California Science Teachers Association that the California governor has proposed to cut the current high school graduation requirement from the already meager 2 years of science to only 1 year of science. Needless to say, as a science teacher, I find this proposal troubling. If implemented, will this lead to lost science education positions, a bigger education gap between poor and wealthy schools, less and less California students qualifying for and going into science and engineering fields? I just don't know, but I'm worried. In trying to bring light to this issue, Richard Saunders has graciously set aside some time to discuss this on the Skeptic Zone. Recently, I asked some of my colleagues what they think about the situation. I'd begin with an informal conversation between myself and my good friend and colleague, Kevin English, followed by a number of interviews.
And what's crazy is, with California being such a hub for science and technology, especially the Bay Area, it seems insane to reduce the amount of science required by students if we want to maintain our status as sort of a leader when it comes to science and technology.
We love science and technology, but we're not going to produce any students that do science and technology.
Exactly.
We'll just bring them in from somewhere else.
Yeah. Let some other country deal with them, or some other state educate them, and then we'll take them and hire them here. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. It's
throw
necessary.
Out the art programs, throw out the music programs, and you might as well toss science with it, and every kid we produce will be able to read, write, and do math. I don't think so. I don't think it works that way. Your reading, your writing, your math is not going to be as advanced if you don't have all of the other topics to go along with it. I mean, in fact, I think music should be mandatory starting in elementary school all the way through graduating high school. It should be a part of the program. Music and art should be a part of every kid's experience all the way through high school because that ties in. I mean, you just look at all the statistics. Kids who play an instrument do better in math and science and English and all their other subjects. Yeah, kids are going to come out of school. They don't know how to reason and think critically, like you said. They can't take information in, reason with it, and come to their own conclusions. They need the conclusions spoon-fed to them right now, the way things are done. And take 1 more year away, that's crazy. The other thing is, I just thought of, is that PE, physical education, which is really just kids going on and playing on the field and doing some different sports, and it's physical activity, which is great, but it's a 2-year requirement. Science would become less of a requirement than physical education. Yes, we have an obesity problem in this country,
but I don't think
that obesity problem, I think, comes from a much deeper problem than just kids not getting PE.
It's not being addressed by the 2 years of PE in high school, certainly. I mean, the kids who don't want to participate in PE, they just don't participate.
My name is Lloyd Chan. I teach at Wilseywood High School, and I've been asked the question about reducing the amount of science required for graduation. Personally, I don't think it benefits the state because if you want to maintain some sort of scientific literacy and a technological base for the California economy, you should be asking them to take more science rather than less.
Do you think this will go through?
It's a possibility because it will save money.
And so, if it saves money, it just might make it through, huh?
Yes, but it will hurt the economy in the long run because then what will happen is that we will not have scientifically aware or literate individuals, which means we will have to import our talent.
Yeah, it seems like we're doing a lot of that in the state already at the upper levels in our UC system, wouldn't you say?
There. Also in Silicon Valley.
Oh, good point.
A lot of your top engineers are now recruited from overseas because we don't have enough local talent to do it.
Yeah. If this happens, we may not have any local talent, right? Well, thank you very much for your comments.
I'm Michaela Waugh, and I teach chemistry, although I've also taught earth science and biology and life science in high school. As far as reducing the requirements, I think it's a terrible idea. Science is a way that we teach our kids how to look at the world and how to think about problems. It's not just a matter of learning the science, it's actually a matter of learning how to think about things. And so by reducing it to 1 year, the fact that they only need 1 year of common sense training actually is it's a horrible, horrible idea. I mean, they only had to take 2 years to begin with, and reducing it to 1 is it's going to do a really big disservice to a huge number of our students.
It does take a little training. I'm Zach Braun, engineer and possibly future teacher. As a society, we just can't continue to lament the fact that we don't have enough trained technicians and specialists, essentially, in the fields of science and engineering. And we can't have that attitude and then continue to cut back the requirements for high school level science. It's those basic building blocks that essentially lead you to develop that enthusiasm for technical skills later in life. And if you're not getting that in the formative years of high school, you're kind of putting yourself up a creek without a paddle.
So we whine about our poorly trained workforce, but then we cut back their training.
Precisely. Right at the time when you need to get kids interested in science to go and pursue those technical degrees, whether they be just trade or, doctorate level kind of research, it all starts in high school science classes. And if the bare minimum requirement is, well, if there's one thing that we've learned as a society, we're kind of lazy by nature, and we're just going to skate by at that bare minimum level.
Yeah, oh yeah. No matter how low you set the bar, they're going to limbo under it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, we hear that one from Aaron a lot.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, my name is Mike Humphreys, and before I start, let me give you a little background where I'm coming from. I graduated from Berkeley at my degree in political science. I was a ROTC guy, so I had 8 years of active duty, 12 years of reserves. I've taught both elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. I taught 3 years at the college level. And to believe that the governor of the state of California will reduce science in the world that we're living in seems a short-sighted view to save money. The bottom line here is these kids need this to compete in a global economy, and there is no way that decreasing science is good for them. You want to expose your students to a vast variety of cross-the-curriculum information so that when they choose their occupation, they're doing it with a good insight. They're not waiting to college and taking more and more years to accomplish this. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. The bottom line is we should not be doing this.
And how about you, sir?
Oh, I'm Ed Murphy, also in the social science department, but I also have an interesting background. 21 years in the military, got a bachelor's degree, a couple of master's degrees, and a doctor's degree. And I think it's ridiculous that we decrease the requirements for science or any course just to save money, because essentially in the global marketplace today, kids need science. We're already behind the rest of the nations around the world. How can we compete in the global economy without having good standards? And 2 years of science is, in my opinion, a requirement.
Yeah, as a science teacher, of course, I'd like it to be more, but yeah, the bare minimum of 2 seems at least something. So
I agree with you 100%.
So I'm speaking here with my colleague and good friend Kevin English, who teaches earth science, and next year will be teaching biology as well. What do you think about this proposal to eliminate one of the 2 years of required science to graduate from California high school?
I think it's a step in the complete opposite direction we should be going. Instead of science being a 2-year requirement as it is now, I think we should be heading in the other direction, making it at least a 3-year requirement. I'd love to see a 4-year requirement, but that's probably not as realistic. Going to 1 year just seems crazy. It means our students coming out of high school are going to be at a disadvantage trying to compete for jobs that are in the science and technology areas, which is an area where we're already struggling. So to stress put all this emphasis on the math, English, language arts, and to skip the other subjects like science, social sciences, arts, music, all of those, I think is definitely a step in the wrong direction. Our students are going to be one-sided. The science provides an opportunity for these kids to learn critical thinking. They have to be given problems and reason with those problems and come to their own conclusions, where a lot of subjects spoon-feed the answers to the kids. And in our science, we're really trying to get kids to think for themselves, and that's an important skill that translates into everything they do.
So I think it'd be fair to say you're against it?
Absolutely against it.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Hello, so I'm in here in the Wilsey Wood Library speaking to my good friend Shelley, the librarian, and she's going to give her response to what she thinks about reducing California's standards from 2 years of science to just 1 year.
I don't think that it's the correct thing to do. I think 2 years of science is a good base for the kids to start for when they're going into college or whatever else they pursue. 1 year is barely getting the terminology and the basics down. And depending on which way they go, whether it's biology or chemistry, they're so totally different that you need to be able to touch on more things in the sciences than that. Science has a lot to do with other things in our world, and I think they need more science background.
Yeah, I like your point about the terminology. I hadn't thought of that aspect before. It takes a while to learn use the language the way you would in science, where you don't use it the same in everyday language, and it takes a while. It takes training. You're right. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before. So.
Yeah, and a lot of it, then they find out that it comes from, the different roots and things with your words and stuff. It goes back to the
Greek,
Latin.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they start learning that, and then they understand with other words too, not even in science, like bio, bi, and to, and things like that. So it helps them to decipher what other words mean too once they start learning that.
Like terra for territory,
Exactly.
terrestrial, things of that sort.
Exactly. So it helps them with a lot of root words and stuff too. So I think science is very important, and I really hope that it doesn't come down to where they only have 1 year. I think more years is very important.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm here with my good buddy Tom Doherty, probably the most entertaining teacher here on campus. He teaches our auto shop. And here's what I want to talk to you about, Tom. The governor of California has proposed to reduce the requirement for graduation from 2 years of science to 1 year of science. What are your feelings on this, Tom?
My feelings on this are that it would degrade the quality of student that we have entering the workforce.
By the way, you can use your own vernacular if you want to.
And it would make I think it would lower the pride in craftsmanship that some students enjoy. And I think that the state of California is pretty much based on science and technology, so I think it would be going the wrong way. On the flip side of that coin, I think that automotive technology should be a science.
I agree. I think that should be a requirement. You should be able to find your gas tank and things of that sort.
Yeah, well, no, I think automotive technology should fill a science requirement, not an art requirement.
It fulfills an art requirement?
Correct.
Well, that seems quite bizarre. Yes. I'm learning all kinds of stuff here.
Yes. So we should, maybe paint smiley faces on the cars. So, no, if I had any sway in this matter, I would definitely drive to the governor's house and give him a stern talking to.
This has been Aaron Kelly Stevens reporting for the Skeptic Zone.
The Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian skeptics.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
I don't want to go there. That was an evil laugh, Joe Benamu.
I don't do evil.
No, you don't. You're far too sweet. But it's great to see you here in the Think Tank along with Dr Rachie. Hi, Dr Rachie, fresh from your adventure to Rhode Island.
Yeah, I hope listeners enjoyed that report. I think it's a really fascinating place and so few people know about it, so people should go there and just enjoy it.
Rhode Island, folks. Maynard with your multiple computers.
Yeah, hey, hang on. How's this for a bit of an action sting to get the show going?
Live this weekend where the action is on Swingin' Radio.
How's that? Hey, that's exciting. That's made your pants sit up and take notice.
It has. Maynard, the walking sound effects and interesting clips man.
That's right. If you can't do it, get an effect, I always say.
And it's good to see Stefan Sojka. Hi, Stefan.
Oh, that clip just made me wet my pants, and I'm fresh from 40 minutes ago, just doing an intro. It was awesome. It's good to be.
Thank you, mate.
It's good to be in the tank as well.
Well, what a week it's been. We'll swing over here to Dr. Rachie, who's studying her iPad with great intensity. Dr. Rachie, what do you have for us in the think tank this week?
So there's been some developments recently with respect to a anti-vaxxer in this country who's not Meryl Dorey this time. She's, I guess, Meryl Dorey in waiting, as some people seem to call her.
Really?
Well, that's what some people say. She's actually doing a PhD at a university here in Australia, which she's been doing for now, I think, about 8 years. Her name's Judy Wileman, and she's previously worked as a science teacher for 20 years, then did a master's of, public health or environmental health, and she famously worked under Peter Dingle in WA.
Oh, dear.
Now, listeners might recall Dr. Peter Dingle. He has a PhD in environmental toxicology, I think. And he became well known to people because his wife died of colon cancer, untreated colon cancer, because she was treated by a homeopath. Now, that was a huge case in Australia because it went to the coroner, and we've talked about the coroner's report before and how awful that was, and I mean, Joe can attest to how awful that was. And so Judy, who was being supervised by him for her PhD, moved to the University of Wollongong, which is in Australia. Anyway, recently she made some statements in a letter she wrote to the Commissioner for Human Rights in Australia. Now, Judy has a habit of writing long letters to people when she doesn't like what they say, or writing them to whoever she thinks is an authority that can get something done. And she wrote to the Commissioner for Human Rights in Australia saying it's the human rights of parents to not have to vaccinate their children, la-da-da-da-da, you know, the sort of canards we're used to from the anti-vaxxers. But one thing that she particularly said, which made a few of us pretty upset and angry, was she inferred that the McCaffreys, the parents whose child passed away from pertussis about 4 years ago, were shills of either Big Pharma or Australian skeptics.
That's something that really isn't that amazing?
Or the government, yeah.
Australian skeptics have been, Stefan, just for your briefly, Australian skeptics have been accused of basically paying off people to promote Big Pharma.
If only we had the money.
Yeah.
Oh, pay me.
Now, this was in a sort of probably a 700-word plus letter. It was the very, very start of it, but it was pretty nasty. And it, in fact, resulted in David McCaffrey having to once again write a public statement saying, please leave our family alone. You can have your soapboxes, you can have your lobby groups, do whatever the hell you like, but stop harassing my family in the public eye. Anyway, this then became escalated by an academic who's also at the same university, who decided to take it further because the university didn't seem particularly interested. In fact, they issued a statement basically saying that whatever Judy Wileman says is her own views, academic freedom, rah-rah-rah, and, you know, it's not the views of the uni. Now, it might have stopped there, except that a journalist for the local paper in that area picked it up, and it ended up being front-page news on Monday.
On the Illawarra Mercury. And how can people get a look at that front page, Dr. Rachie? I know it was doing the rounds on Twitter.
It's posted on the Stop the AVN page.
Right, on Facebook.
So the front page, I think, said whooping cough row over UOW researcher. And then inside there was a double-page spread with the headline, Grieving Parents Slam Researcher. And there was a story about how Judy had written this letter, and there were excerpts from what David McCaffrey then wrote on Facebook saying, leave us alone.
PR disaster, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. And there were also comments from the senior academic at UOW who decided to escalate it, saying, because in fact he took it to the ethics people at UOW, and they said, oh, look, it's nothing to do with us because she's not she hasn't applied for ethics for her project, therefore we can't do anything, it's out of our hands sort of thing. And he said, well, that's not good enough because the ethics of her behaviour... I mean, the other senior researcher then went to other parts of the uni to say, look, no, you guys, you've got to do something about this. So there was front page news, and then there was a double page spread, and the following day there was an article interviewing a local GP saying that the anti-vaccine message is wrong and saying, you know, whooping cough vaccination is very important. So she got slammed. So to say today...
Oh, yes? What? I haven't seen the latest. Please tell me.
Lesson in stop digging a hole or, you know, take your foot... You know how we say that some people only open their mouth to change their feet?
Yes.
Right. So today she wrote an open letter to the Dean of Research at UOW, but she sent it to the Illawarra Mercury.
As you do.
And said, this is an official complaint against this other academic at the university who said these things about me, sent it to the newspaper. So, of course, the journalist sent it to me to ask for comment. And the reason they asked me to comment is because, I don't know if you remember, but we had a complaint made against us, Australian Skeptics, that is, a number of years ago by a chiropractor by the name of Joe Arano.
Yes, a number of years ago, yes.
Now, if people want to read the epic takedown of that, please Google Australian Skeptics Joe Arano, where Iran did a beautiful evisceration of this guy's complaint, and it was thrown out of the HCCC and laughed at by everybody. This apparent official complaint is on a par with that. It starts off saying, I want to make an official complaint, and then it says, skeptics have been mean to me on the internets, and my Google machines found that they called me mean names, and I think that they're being paid by somebody. And let me just read you a little bit of it.
Please do.
So here's the connection, guys, to the conspiracy, right? So the researcher at UOW that's complained about her, now he's apparently a subscriber to our magazine, and we're a lobby group that funded Ken McLeod, who made a complaint about the AVN to the HCCC. We also gave a prize to the McCaffreys for their public advocacy for promoting vaccination.
About 3 years ago, I seem to remember. It was a well-deserved prize we gave.
Yeah, for
the Thornett,
the Fred Thornett
Award for the promotion of reason.
Yeah. Now, also, she's been doing her PhD for 8 years unpaid, and we have smeared her on the internet. Please Google my name to find the ridicule and misinterpretation of my statements. Stop being so mean to me. I think I'm going to quit my PhD. Basically, that's what it says.
That's a good summary.
Now,
that's front page news.
Actually, I think the lesson from what she did today is just shut up. Really shut up. Because all this is doing is making her look like a fool. As a result of this, there's going to be more articles in the Illawarra Mercury over the next few days. Because
if there's one thing we've learned over the years, hopefully there's more than one thing, but the likes of Meryl Dorey and co can't shut up.
Yeah.
They have to release statements. They have to make comments. You know?
I was trying to think of other examples of where academics have been taken to task for expressing views which do bring the unis into disrepute or have potential to. And the only example I could remember offhand was of Professor Andrew Fraser from Macquarie Uni, who there was a lot of controversy over some of his views a number of years back, where he made I think he wrote a letter to one of the newspapers which he signed with his academic title, and his views were seen to be extremely racist and potentially associated with white supremacy. And initially the university spoke out saying that, this was basically academic freedom, they couldn't do anything about it. But eventually there was so much controversy, and it was actually really causing a lot of problems at the university, that they did actually, I think, suspend him. But I think I sort of feel like we're in this sort of this age where there's this defence of unacceptable behaviour or what's... Let me start again.
It's all right, Joe. I think I know what you're trying to say is people are too scared to shut other people up for fear of
that's exactly
offending them or treading on their rights, or they've got every right to say that, etc., etc.
At what point do you draw a line in the sand and say, this has gone beyond what is acceptable, and this behaviour is not what we want of a professional person in a professional role.
Can I just tell you one of the things? Like, I read through this nonsense and I was laughing for a bit, and then I read it again and I face-palmed, and then I read it again. And there's a section where she says, because we paid the McCaffreys a prize.
We being the skeptics.
Because the skeptics gave the McCaffreys a prize, which, by the way, they donated to pertussis research, which they've declared publicly.
Yes.
That encourages them to go out and advocate for vaccines. So what would happen if an anti-vax person or parent whose child was injured by a vaccine got paid? Then that just opens the floodgates for them to go out and say how bad vaccines are. Now, can I ask you a question? Yeah. Does anyone know anyone like that? Meryl Dorey? How much money does she make? Oh, in 2010, $280,000. And she goes out and preaches about how bad vaccines are. Judy wrote that down in a letter to the Vice Chancellor of Research. She's talking about her friend. I don't know if she doesn't know what she's writing, if she doesn't understand what she's writing.
Maynard, you're hanging out with evil skeptics.
I thought maybe the PhD stands for pretty hard drawing. I don't know. Look, this is one of these intellectual arguments that I don't get into, because if I say something, the other side wins automatically. So I'm going to have a big glass of shut up juice here. But can I go on to breaking news from the
breaking news?
Maynard's breaking news from the boundaries of science. Mouse grows liver in Japan.
Oh, I think a lot of mice grow livers in Japan.
Is that a mouse grew a liver in Japan?
Hang on. Breaking news update. I'm sorry, I'll read that again. Mouse grows human liver in Japan. Yeah, you're not so bloody mouthy now, are you, Miss Try? You went to education after high school. One of those. whatever they call that. Yeah. What do they call it? It's the third level.
Edumacated.
Next thing.
Yeah, that's right. Hang on, tertiary, I just heard in my earbud. Tertiary is the word you're looking for, Maynard. Okay. Now, look, they actually...
Tell us more about these mouse livers, Maynard, or these human mouse livers.
Well, yes, last Thursday or Friday, just after lunch, the Japanese injected some stem cells into a mouse, and it was able to grow a human liver to the size of 5 millimetres.
Whoa, that's a big human liver.
How many vodkas is that?
Little vodka.
I was going to say, I'm sure they celebrated, but the mouse just had like a shandy and some second-hand smoke. It's really... It's only a 5 millimetre long liver. What are you going to do with it? But they're just saying it could be something for the future there. And Joe, our medical correspondent, can you see it? Okay, can you see a day where we'll just turn up and ask for one of these Tamaguchi Japanese livers?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, and why would you pick a liver first? Is that because that's the largest organ in the body? Why?
It's the fun organ.
Okay, right, okay.
I thought something else was the fun organ.
Well, it's the one that needs replacing the most often.
Yeah.
I've been wasting a lot of time.
The other ones need extending, but they don't need replacing them.
Well, Japanese are known for their love of beer, actually. Big beer drinkers.
They would have liver problems there, yes.
And sake.
Yeah, so I think that's exciting news. That's about all the relevant stuff I had.
I see. But this week, Maynard, we're not playing What's in Your Bag, Maynard.
No, we're not playing What's in Our Bag. It's a computer bag, unfortunately, but I do have some shout-outs while the show's been going on, live to tape here. We've got a shout-out from Tom Croucher, one of the Skeptic Bros in WA.
With the placebo bands. Hey, Tom.
He says hello to us, and also Shelley Stockton. She actually poses this question, which is it's a question without notice, which I'm putting to the committee. Shelley writes to us on our Facebook page, our Dirty Disbelievers Facebook page, by the way.
Sure.
Anecdotal evidence suggests that the rate of bow ties amongst medical practitioners is much higher than amongst the general population. Have there been any studies to confirm this? Now, Joe, you're you're the next best thing to a doctor and nurse.
Well, Doctor Who wears a bow tie at the moment, doesn't he?
That's right. And why doesn't he ever have an actual nurse with him?
I have to say, I think that anecdotally that is absolutely true, because the only people I ever see wearing bow ties these days, not necessarily any doctor, but physicians.
Yeah,
and even better, on a bicycle.
Wouldn't it be an OH&S public liability thing? Because if you wear a tie and you're a doctor, you could easily get the tie sort of stuck.
That's what I was just thinking. If you're doing some surgery or something,
And you know the doctor's ties are actually a major infection control issue.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Especially if they dribble over dinner and stuff.
I guess they would be.
Yeah. all sorts
But
of
a bow
things.
tie,
So a bow
not a
tie
problem.
would fix the problem. They'd look rather dapper. So
I
think it's
was
no
at Sydney Uni today, and there were a fair few academics wearing bow ties. And I know a neurologist who just was given an award of Australia.
Oh yes,
on Monday, who is constantly in
He
bow
always wears
ties.
a bow tie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
The places you take us, Mina.
Well, now I'd like to
The avenues we explore with your...
Well, I'd like to thank Shelley Stockton
Thank you,
of the
Shelley.
Dirty Disbelievers Facebook page for bringing that one into us and completely diverting our conversation away from our intended path.
Do they also wear pocket watches as well? I mourn the end of the pocket watch era.
And here's a quick quiz for those fans of Carry On movies. What type of flower was it that was in the rectum at the end of the movie? That's all.
Oh,
There we
it
go.
was a daisy.
That's right.
How is it that I haven't seen the movie and I know that?
And you know who the actor was?
Hattie Jake?
No, lying on the bed.
No? Kenneth?
An old English actor. Don't worry, folks. Google Carry On. No.
Google flower up bum or
Something like that. Google whatever you like, listeners.
Rightio.
Now, Stefan, you have been, as you mentioned quite a few weeks ago on the Skeptic Zone, you were sent a book.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, almost about a year ago. This is one of the problems of coming here not often enough. Yes, a few months ago I mentioned this book that I was given two copies of, actually, from Andrew Carruth, a book called The Christ Conundrum, The Skeptic's Guide to Jesus. And as it happens, 6 months later, I still haven't finished reading it because I just live that sort of busy kind of life. However, it is an excellent read so far, and it's all about the historical context of Jesus and how all the sort of some of the historical mistakes may have been made, and people starting to believe things that maybe they shouldn't if they only looked at it more skeptically.
Interesting. And that's autographed, I know.
And it's autographed. And so they gave me two copies, one to read myself and dog ear and drop in the bathroom, in the sink and everything. But the other one is in perfect pristine condition, and we're going to give it away if we're actually looking for people to write a limerick, a religious limerick, a biblical, Christian, anything, a limerick around the theme of religion or Christ.
Or God or...
anything to do
Moses
with
or
that.
something
Anything at all. Anything. And if any of our listeners can come up with a limerick of biblical proportions and send it in to Richard...
Yeah, if that's right, folks. You've heard the message. Send in your limerick of biblical note to Richard at skepticzone.tv, and we'll give you a couple of weeks to send them in. I'll pass those on to you, Stefan. We'll both have a bit of a look, and then we can choose a winner.
And the winner will get a copy of this Christ Conundrum book, Andrew Carruth, which might even help you write a better limerick next time. But we want to hear some fun.
All right, thank you very much. Oh, boy, the places this show goes, I never know. But we're going to a place which I've flown over, but I've never visited. We're going to Texas, courtesy of Joe.
Yes, well, Texas is certainly an interesting place, and Ben Radford actually picked up this story. I saw it earlier today. You might remember about a year ago there was some really weird stories flying around the media about a horrific scene that was supposedly discovered on a property in Texas.
Oh, I remember, yes.
It was really it was quite bizarre. There was suddenly these reports about mass graves and
that's right.
all sorts of rotting corpses, and that a lot of them were children. And the story disappeared fairly quickly because it turned out that it was a psychic who had actually called this report into the police describing the scene. So when the police actually went to investigate, they found there was really nothing to see. There's a couple, Joe Bankson and Jenna Charlton live on the property, and when the police investigated, they didn't find anything. But what's now happened is that this couple are actually suing the police and several major news organisations for defamation because of what happened. They're claiming that the sheriff's office and the media groups acted in reckless disregard and caused damage to the couple's reputation and good name. So they say that they're now unable to return to their rented home because people are very suspicious of them and a little bit put off by what happened. Apparently when this all came about, it was absolute mayhem. They had first the county sheriff's office went to investigate, and then the day after that they had the FBI, Texas Rangers, cadaver dogs, news helicopters, you name it, all descending on their property, and all because this psychic had made this phone call claiming that this was on his property. They're really suing some major outlets, including the New York Times, CNN, and ABC News. And I just thought this was quite interesting because, this is one of those examples of where the behaviour of a psychic can really cause a lot of harm. It's one of those things where people say, it's a psychic, it's a bit of fun.
What's the harm? Yes.
But, the claims that this person made were really pretty horrific, and these people have had their lives damaged by it.
It puts the police in an almost impossible situation because I know the police in this country are duty-bound to follow up leads.
Absolutely.
And if someone walks in and says, look, I know about this, they have to follow it up.
And this is what the police said in this case, is that the claims were serious enough that they did have to follow up on them.
So, Jo, can you just reiterate what was reportedly on their property?
So this psychic claimed that there was a mass murder, that there were dismembered corpses and a mass grave, and many of them were children, and it was quite bizarre.
And the psychic had a vision of that. They didn't see it.
I don't know the details, actually. I didn't have time to look it up further. I remember it at the time, but I didn't really see what...
And, of course, it's the old story is... And I've seen this in print and on TV. Psychics will say stuff that is not true, which is off the mark, which has no relevance. And afterwards, they'll say, I helped the police with this inquiry.
Exactly. Yep, absolutely.
Whereas they should say, and you know what? I hindered the police with this inquiry, is what they really did. But people hear that, Mary blogs that the psychic helped the police.
Well, they're usually just wasting resources and sending people off on wild goose chases. And one of the cases that Ben documented was that in 2004, apparently a psychic contacted the TSA, the Transport Administration in the US, claiming that there was a bomb on board an American Airlines flight, and this resulted in the flight being cancelled and people being moved onto different flights and so on. So they really cause a lot of trouble.
It's a bit mischievous, isn't it?
It is.
So like psychics, so they don't, or as we know, they don't not always accurate with their timing. So it could have actually been a massacre there maybe 3.5 million years ago of Australopithecus or something, and so they actually did sense the actual massacre, or in the future, or even on another planet somewhere. They did sense there was a massacre. They are absolutely accurate.
If there is one thing I was going to say, vague. They are...
they're absolutely vague.
Yes.
That's right. So there was a massacre, just not exactly then and there.
Maynard, I can't...
From the Maynard breaking news desk, news just to hand, literally from the last week or two, is that the Psychic TV is no longer the most sensationalist show you can watch on digital television in Australia on a Saturday night. No longer.
No?
Because I always enjoy it because it's always a bit of a fun. They have a bit of a colour reading and it's a bit of fun.
Oh, boy.
But at 11 o'clock now, there's two girls that kind of ring people on the phone and get undressed, and they get more undressed at midnight. I forget I don't know what the show's called, but
unbelievable.
It's like, what? Are you kidding?
England. I went to England a few years ago. There's about 100 shows like that. They run on about 1 million channels all night. It's just crazy. That was awesome. No, it's terrible. It's like,
I'm quite saddened to see that not only there is such rubbish as Psychic TV, but this thing. It's sad to see.
Frankly, the only thing to watch on TV on a Saturday night is Rage. So.
Rage, 25 years old.
Okay, you say that. I was greatly saddened earlier this year. I was talking to a bunch of Year 11 and Year 12 students in Newcastle, and I casually mentioned, I thought, what am I going to do to appear vaguely hip here? I casually mentioned that I'd hosted Rage twice, and they did not know what Rage was. These kids were... Yes, they were students from Jesmond High in Newcastle, and I think they got all their film clips from YouTube and other places and didn't watch Rage. So I think there's some people it's become an area to look for their film clips.
But it was always the all-nighters, wasn't it?
I hosted it live on New Year's Eve of 87, 88 or 88, 89 at the Rat Party.
I would have been watching.
Well, it was actually live, and I think it's one of the few times that Rage has been live. And then the time after that, I played a whole bunch of Weird Al and Ringo Starr songs. So, but
I think I was watching.
At TAM Australia, someone came up to me and said, look, I met the girlfriend before my wife watching your show that night. And I didn't know whether to say thank you or not.
Girlfriend.
The girl that he went out with before his wife. Yes.
It all makes sense.
But this weekend we're doing some very special things. We're going to do some filming at Supernova. We're hoping to catch up with Christopher Lloyd. I want to ask him what it was like to produce the entire Frasier series, and also to do, of course, Roger Rabbit. In that, and Yvonne Craig, the original Batgirl. We're hoping to catch up with them. But even if we don't, just the fans and, the people that are getting around in their undies dressed as vampire hunters, men and women, let me tell you.
Now, Maynard, we were there last year and we filmed a great report which is online.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you just Google Maynard at Supernova, have a look there and you'll see Larry Hagman having a chat, and also with my childhood friend Roger Healy from I'd Very Genie as well.
You spoke to them both. I remember.
I did. And there's a great TARDIS dress in there. Because people make dresses out of TARDIS. It's fantastic, I wish I could fit into them. Oh, and one thing before I go, if for all your Shatner needs, get to the Look at His Butt podcast. They're the two girls that do, the two skeptics that do the best chat. If you only listen to one Shatner podcast in your lifetime, it's got to be Look at His Butt.
Wise words indeed from Maynard. I can't think of anything else to top that. Can you? No, the girls are just...
Anybody else got a Shatner podcast?
No, they're all blown away by...
Just me?
We're doing some research, actually.
They're doing...
Just discovered something called a Q sensor bracelet.
No, not another one.
Let Joe tell you.
This is really weird. I just came across this now while we were recording.
Breaking news.
Breaking news from our medical correspondent.
Actually, it's not that Dr Rachie and I are distracted. We're just very good multitaskers. So,
what is this?
It's really strange. It was actually this is from the Sydney Morning Herald website. It's so Bill Gates is apparently putting $1.4 million to US university researchers who are planning to use these Q sensors, which are some kind of bracelet. And they say that the sensors in these bracelets detect excitement, stress, fear, engagement, boredom, and relaxation through the skin. And that past studies with autistic children have used these bracelets to show those who might seem unresponsive to external stimuli are engaged in learning.
Oh.
It's really odd. I mean, it looks very interesting, but it just sounds to me like something that you'd be using in like a lie detector type situation in detecting, subtle...
Should we say early days?
Yeah, look, I don't want to be jumping on this immediately and saying this is nonsense because, as Rachel and I were just saying, it's... you wouldn't really expect something like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to have, as Rachael put it, to have the wool pulled over their eyes. But it just seems a little bit implausible and odd.
But also, they're not making any medical claims. They're just saying that you can detect how people are responding to things. Which I don't know. Maybe it's plausible.
The aim is actually to use it in the classroom to determine whether kids are engaged with learning and to help them respond better to their learning needs and see how kids are behaving in the classroom.
I think it's mostly motion sensing, so it could actually tell if they're picking their nose or scratching their backside. I think that's what it is.
You've got your back turned on the blackboard.
But these days, I mean, who knows what the kid... I mean, it could show that a child is entirely engaged, but they could be engaged in something completely different.
Texting, probably. Texting. Well, I'm going to run away and do some texting at the moment, I think. Our glasses are empty. How sad is that? Oh, maybe just one little drop left. There we go. Enough to say thank you, Maynard, for coming along.
Oh, look, it's a pleasure. Maynard.com.au.
That's the way. Stefan?
Oh, it's been wonderful being here. I hope to come back here in less than 6 months.
What's your website?
Oh, I've forgotten. Facebook.
Really? Yeah. Joe Benamou, thank you for coming along.
Thanks, Richard.
And Dr Rachie.
Thank you. Did you hear that trumpet in the background?
Some guy blowing his nose. What a club this is, folks. Cheers, everybody. No idea. Hello, Richard Saunders here with a little bit of information for those people living in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm going to be speaking about my adventures with the Power Balance wristband at a special event hosted by the Bay Area Skeptics, 7 p.m. Wednesday, the 11th of July, at La Pena Lounge, which is According to the information I'm seeing, a 6-minute stroll from Ashby BART station. Now you can find out more details by visiting www.baskeptics.org. Also, if you visit www.skepticzone.tv, you can bid on an autographed photograph of the think tank crew. Myself, Iran Sergeyev, Joanne Benamou, Stefan Sojka, Dr Rachie Dunlop, and Maynard. Also included in that auction is an autographed copy of Maynard's book, Maynard's Guide to DAG.
Richard, now I realise why I miss this show so much, why being away from it I pine, I agonise, and I just wish that I was here more often. It's because the show's so good.
I thought it was because of the drinks that our listeners buy us.
Oh, well, that's and the ones we buy ourselves as well.
That's right. Well, you know that on the Skeptic Zone website now, www.skepticzone.tv, there's an option, instead of donating to the show, because PayPal can be a bit funny sometimes, you can now, listeners, you can now buy us a drink. You can buy us a round of drinks.
That's dangerous, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Is that illegal?
Well, I mean, listeners can donate to the show by clicking on the button that says buy us a round of drinks. It's the same sort of thing, but check it out. Also on the website, I've got a little trailer for a new project I'm working on called The Vaccination Chronicles.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, very important.
Check that out.
Little documentary I'm working on.
I've seen some of the shorts. It's looking good. No previews or anything yet.
Just a little teaser. Just a little teaser.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and don't forget the Christ Conundrum giveaway, the book.
That's right.
Don't forget to come up with your limerick and get onto the website and tell us about that. And we do have that free autographed copy of Andrew Carruth's book, The Christ Conundrum.
And, of course, just to remind you, if you write to richard@skepticzone.tv with your limerick...
That's right.
And in a couple of weeks, you'll be the judge, Stefan.
I'll judge it.
And we'll send off that book.
That's right, a limerick about Jesus. Or a related topic.
Religion-y.
Yeah, religion-y something.
Something like that.
Biblical.
Biblical.
A limerick of biblical proportions.
I like it.
All 5 lines.
All right, well, I think I'm ready to collapse. That was a great think tank. I've had
huge.
A big Chinese dinner. I had some drinks.
I'm coming back.
Yeah, you're coming back
in less than 6 months.
I'm glad to hear it.
All right, Richard. See you next time.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.